Thank you very much, Olivier, for taking the time to talk to me. For those who don't know, Olivier has over 30 years of experience in finance, particularly in analyzing the financial markets, and most notably, you worked over 6 years at Swift, and you're now leading DLT or Distributed Ledger Technology, Senior Business Analyst at Euroclear, which is one of the largest SCDs, if I'm not correct.
CSD.
CSD, sorry, yeah, Central Securities Depository in Europe.
Depository. Yeah.
A lot of these names and terms not easy to pronounce, but yeah, I don't think it's you need me to say that it's a very impressive resume, so I'm very excited to get into it. Yeah, to start off, Olivier, could you talk to me a bit more about your background and your role as a senior business analyst at Euroclear?
Okay. I started working in a CSD, in the local CSD in Belgium 30 years ago. Next week it will be 30 years ago. And I was always from between the IT and the business, starting from IT side. I've got an IT background. Even I learned IT, even Java exists. So just to give you an idea of my age. And with time, I was trained on different financial specific things. So I learned more and more about finance, and I moved to more product management type of role. 10 years ago, I created my own company around blockchain. We were probably a bit too early at that time, but it was quite fun. The company was rather sustainable because at the beginning it was quite difficult, but at the end we made about a dozen of proof of concepts. And I was part of the BNP Paribas digital asset group for building the BNP Paribas group strategy on digital assets. That was quite fun. And after COVID, a lot of things has changed. And I went back to an employee role at Euroclear because they were looking for someone who had DLT knowledge and a CSD knowledge. So there are not thousands in Belgium. So I was lucky they found me. And I joined 2.5 years now ago. Yes, something like that, 2-3 years ago. And my role is really on the IT side to be the referent person when it comes to DLT, everything related to DLT, more on the functional point of view, because there is another guy who is more technical, with the technical architect on DLT. But the two of us, we do the kind of center of expertise, even if it's informal, regarding DLT in the group for the Euroclear group.
So you're with you and the other person are the only people working on DLT within Euroclear?
No, we have more than that.
Okay.
We have different projects in the group on DLT. Some projects are more, how do I say it? We are more involved to learn and listen, and it's like the Chainlink project. I saw on your questions the Chainlink project with Swift. That was typically the kind of things other people did with. Well, I was involved, but there were other people. We also have our own solution. You may have seen press releases on a system called DFMI, so the digital financial market infrastructure. This one is built on Corda, so it's a DLT. And we have a team working on it for maintenance, evolution. We support more, we try to support more business. We're involved in the ECB experimentation on digital cash. So we have quite a large team, large compared to a startup, small for a big bank. Yeah. But we have a dynamic team working on DLT.
That's great. And how did you get originally involved in blockchain? And like, when was the first time that you got in touch with blockchain, Web3, and DLT?
Oh, that's a long time ago. I heard about Bitcoin, and I thought, what's that? Because I'm very curious, I tried to understand it. It was probably 2013, something like that.
Wow. That's early.
And I thought I will buy a training on that to understand. And for the same amount at that time, I had the possibility to buy 10 Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin was at, I don't remember, 120 or something
Yeah,
like that. So I
2013.
bought 5 or 6, something like that.
Wow.
And I exchange it between different wallets that I created on different exchange. I do some FX transaction because I had an account at Itbit in Singapore dollar and one in France at Paymium. So I made a foreign exchange. I even pay, that's annoying story, but I pay a meetup in Singapore next to the Cybers event using my Bitcoin. And this meetup was something like $80, something like that. But I paid with 0.3 Bitcoin at that time.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
it was
very
probably the
expensive.
most expensive meetup I never attended. But all in all, I spent so many Bitcoins to just play, learn, etc. that I ended up with only one. Because as a good banker, when Bitcoin reached 400, I thought, wow, times 3. So I sell. Okay, that's how I learned. But what was very interesting is the technology behind. And I thought the technology can solve a lot of problems that I had before in my professional life. And I proposed it to my boss at that time, but the company was being purchased by another company. So he encouraged me to create my own and do some consultancy, what I did in 2014, so 10 years ago. And that was cool. So
Yeah.
we developed with another guy, we were two. CTO was an Ethereum expert. We made a dozen of proof of concept. One of them was a marketplace in the Netherlands for kind of long-term loans between institutions. It was quite interesting. We made it on Ethereum, not on the live network, on Robston, I think at that time. I did program a little bit, but I was more on the functional part. Accepted that we tried to create an investment fund during COVID to get busy. The idea was to have a AI engine to decide how to balance portfolio on ESG product and tokenizing the fund in very small parts and distributing the fund in a tokenized form. And then we had to discuss it with the regulator. And after discussing with the Belgian and Luxembourgish regulators and the French one, we realized either we move to Singapore, Hong Kong, or Delaware,
Yeah.
or we just do something different. Because I saw another question about regulation. Regulation in Europe, it's really a hurdle or a barrier to adoption of this technology.
Yeah.
That's really the main concern we have today with DLT. That's why I told you I don't see any successful project on DLT in a bank, because we have so many regulation impacting us that having a true DLT project is almost impossible.
Yeah. We recently got recently we got the introduction of the MiCA regulations in Europe. Do you believe that that hinders the process of blockchain adoption in general in Europe as well? And will that give an advantage to other continents or other
No,
countries?
absolutely not. No, it's good to have a regulation, but we regulate everything. Even when you go to the toilet, we need a regulation in Europe. That's painful. MiCA is really focusing on cash, because one of the statements in MiCA is if there is another regulation regulating it, that's the other regulation that takes it, more or less. I keep it simple. So in the financial markets, with security token, as we call it, it's so difficult because we are, from a CSD, we are under CSDR, or participant, they have all the regulation about the fact that they are custodian, and if they want to distribute it, they have regulation like PRIPS or MiFID that are impacting them. So it's Mika will help for the cash leg, but the cash leg, it's interesting. But you see today that there is a battle between the CBDC for central banks who doesn't want to lose control on the money, and you have some banks launching the tokenized deposit or something like that, whatever the name is. It's like a deposit token where you have your token is backed by a real asset on an account. But if you put cash on an account, it costs money just to manage it. So what's the point? CBDC, I don't see any value on it. For the retail, I think it's stupid. For the wholesales, why not? But as long as you don't have interoperability between CBDCs, why not using correspondent banking or the traditional channel? If you have a digital euro and digital pound, and you make a transfer in a UK security in euro, one day or another, you have to convert your euro in pounds. So the point would be to do a transfer from your own euro account to your client who might be in pounds. But you cannot do it with CBDC. No. Because both parties have to be on the same currency. That's a real issue. If you don't propose automated forex regulated by central banks, like an automated market maker, for example, like this kind of technology that we had both on DeFi and on some new emerging banks like Wise or others. If you don't have it between central banks, I don't see a lot of values today.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up a next question. You already pointed out with the CBDCs. We recently saw a lot of market turmoil with the Bank of Japan's interest rate hike, and it caused like a chain of effects throughout the global markets. Do you believe that whether it be a CBDC or alternative DLT blockchain solutions, that could be helping managing such volatilities? Because again, all these markets are connected to each other. That's why you had something in Japan or China happening, it has effects on Japan, and that also has effects on America and all the other currencies around the world. Do you believe that could be a solution, blockchain or?
No, I don't think it will change anything. You have to see it differently from a global trade perspective, or let's say wholesale CBDC area. Now the market is moving. The market is reacting to any change, whatever the technology of the currency is. So for the market, if there is something happening in China, it will affect the whole market, with or without CBDC. From a personal perspective, it's a little bit different, because if you take the example of the guy in Venezuela, or is receiving his salary, is buying Bitcoin at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month, even if Bitcoin is fluctuating, he still have more than in regular Venezuelan. So you can imagine that some of the digital currencies will become a kind of safer value for these kind of people. And if they are not subject too much to market change, it might help people in the world to save a bit of their money without being affected by the collateral impact of big crisis on their own local money. But we saw that Bitcoin has a bit of it went down after the big crash. So it's still a bit correlated, and we need more correlation between Bitcoin and the global markets.
Yeah, it's funny that Bitcoin is created as we could say a hedge against the traditional financial system, or more as Bitcoin got created as a reaction to the 2008 financial crisis, and eventually the ultimate goal is to replace the dollar or any other currencies as a decentralized currency. But yet in the DeFi world or in crypto, we're celebrating when an ETF, a Bitcoin ETF gets launched, but that's just we're still very much tied to what's happening in the traditional financial world. And we shouldn't actually be celebrating that we got a Bitcoin ETF because we just participate in the traditional finance system, and it shows that we're still very much tied to I'm not sure if I could say the old ways, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I found it rather ironic
Yeah,
to
exactly.
see that after Bitcoin, we created the same thing that exists in traditional financial market. DeFi, what is DeFi? Basically, it's financial markets, old-fashioned financial markets. We lend, we borrow, we exchange. No, we do derivatives.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, I guess that way is needed to get to that goal, I guess. I'm not sure if Bitcoin eventually will be the end goal and will be the major payment system of the world. If not Bitcoin, it could be something else. But one thing I personally believe in is that blockchain will definitely, blockchain is definitely here to stay. And to that point, I also want to ask you a follow-up question to the previous one. Do you believe that what's happening in the markets, you could, whether that's on the financial side, but I guess also, well, on the social side in the world, you have a lot of things going on, you have wars or looming wars, all of that. Do you think that these conditions accelerate the need for blockchain and crypto technology adoption in the banking sector?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I've got the feeling, but it's probably because I'm old and grumpy sometimes, but I've got the feeling that most of the people don't realize that firstly, they let too much power to the regulator with their own money. They spend the whole life working to save money for the retirement, and they let the state decide for them. So they don't realize it. And on the other hand, they just accept it, and they don't realize that technology like Bitcoin or any other technology or any other currency using the technology like blockchain can be an alternative way of managing their own right to get money. I think people don't get it. And if you look at some of the crises, they say, yeah, okay, no choice. But no, you have a choice. You don't know, but you have a choice. And when you explain to people what Bitcoin is, they say, yeah, that's for terrorism, that's for ransom, that's shitty thing. You can buy drug, you can buy, the reputation was not that good. And I think banks and regulator are not in favor of Bitcoin because you probably have more people who understand the impact of Bitcoin in banks than in population. And because they understand it, they have to save their life for longer. As long as Bitcoin is seen as a very negative thing, they will continue doing the work as they did before. You have to know that a bank is like a huge ship or huge container ship. It will move, but it will take years and years. So the banking sector, helped by the regulator, they need to gain time to adapt. And today, the regulation will put barriers or hurdles to the adoption of crypto technologies or crypto assets or cryptocurrencies. On the same time, they have the negative impact or the negative perception of this. Like that, they can get some time. They're trying CBDC to see, okay, do we understand it? Can we try to have an alternative? But CBDC, none of the bank is interested in retail CBDC. That's the big problem.
Do you think retail CBDC is tied to, um, corporate CBDC, if that's what you can call it?
To me, it's two different things. If you buy a security, if you take the traditional way, big custodian is exchanging securities with another big custodian. They're changing it in the local market against central bank money. So I give you 1 billion of shares or bond, and you give me 1 billion of money with central bank account movement. So the price of your money is 1, because €1 in central bank is €1 in central bank. If you go to retail, if we are in the same bank, if I buy 1,000 euro of debt that you give me, so it's an internal to the bank, the 1,000 euro is from your account to my account. But what is the price for a bank of this 1,000 euro? Because today the price of money on a bank account is about 1 to 10. So for 1,000 euro exchange between us in central bank, you can have a collateral impact of 100. So wholesale is 1-to-1, but retail, we're talking about something different. If we start doing retail payments using central bank money, it will cost a fortune to retail banks, because you need much more money in central bank, you need much more deposit, and the banks, they simply don't have it. So on one end, we push to have, with Basel, we push to have 30, 20, 10% of the money in real cash in central bank. And on the other end, we would say, okay, now every single payment you do should be in central bank. That's simply unavoidable. You can have it. So what's the point of a bank proposing central bank money payment to retail people? That makes no sense.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It definitely, yeah, you need a big reserve as a bank to be able to handle that, well, liquidity, that volume. You mentioned before Euroclear, obviously. You were a keynote speaker at Chainlink Smartcon in 2023, last year. I watched your panel. You were there with other industry leaders from Swift and ZBank. SDX was there too, and of course Sergey Nazarov, the co-founder of Chainlink. And you talked about how on-chain finance is transforming global markets. Since that point, how has the conversation around DLT and blockchain evolved within Euroclear?
Well, Euroclear, first of all, you have to know that Euroclear is a systemic company.
Mm-hmm.
So we manage, in Europe, we are the most important infrastructure for exchanging bonds, equities, and funds. If you have to see it as a central bank for securities. So we are very regulated, very secure. You can see us as a big infrastructure company that is 99.99 available in the most secure way. That's how we see it. So explaining that will give you an idea why we're not the most innovator. That makes sense. So we are more following what others are doing. However, we realized that having a DLT approach and having, for example, bonds. Why bonds? Because it's easier than equities. But having bonds, digital bonds on our own blockchain, our own DLT, will be rather interesting for the future, not for now. Today,
Mm-hmm.
that's no value, but in the future, you can see it in a more longer term, and say, okay, we have today some siloed infrastructure, very secure. Some people are now open system, others are mainframe, and etc. And we don't really communicate, except it we're using Swift. Swift message is nice, but it's asynchronous message using communication, like I send an instruction, it happens or not, I get transaction summary. So it's quite easy, but it's not the most efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine that the largest CSDs are connecting together using real-time infrastructures, and these real-time infrastructures are open to similar blockchain from the participant. So me as a client of, let's say, BNP, and you as a client of, let's say, ING,
Mm-hmm.
we could potentially trade together on a retail perspective, without going through the whole process at the bank and filling paper, etc. To say, okay, we do the deal, we use something fancy like HTLC because it's the buzzword of the month. We use something like that, and the trusted authority at the end of the day will be Euroclear, because that's the end party who will settle the movement of trades, because we're not in the same bank. So you can imagine that. But this is, compared to what we have today, that's science fiction, because we need interoperability between the different networks. And that's why Chainlink is interesting, and I think Sergey understood it. And we need the regulation to allow it. And today, this is absolutely not the case.
That Europe is hindering, or well, I guess it's in general in the world, in specific in Europe, I guess MiCA and other regulations are hindering that process of making that happen.
But it's not MiCA. MiCA is trying to solve it. But if you look at what we do, the regulation is CSDR. So the CSD regulation. And the CSD regulation was made to ensure that the major CSDs are acting like market infrastructure, like central banks, the same level of security and control on central bank. So I will give you an example that the regulation imposes. If two clients with a node, so you have ING with a node, BNP with a node, they trade together, they exchange something together, the CSD has to be involved in a transaction and should be able to modify the data of the trader. So if you think in a blockchain philosophy, it means that if ING is using the private key to sign a transaction to BNP and vice versa, the CSD should be able to modify something he didn't sign. And that's the regulation. So, and the regulation will come to different level of holding. The custodian has to be able to correct the balance. If you make a transfer and you realize that you have additional fees that were not taken into account, the bank will debit you without your authorization of the additional fees. It's not you who will say, okay, I pay €2.50 more. You will be debited with no choice, because the regulation imposed to each bank to be able to adapt balance of the client based on whatever circumstances. It can be legal, it can be fees, it can be a lot of things. It's exactly the same thing. So in the blockchain philosophy, if a bank is providing a blockchain to the market, the bank should be able to modify transaction or to add transaction on behalf of participant. It means that even if I have only one private key on my account, the bank should be able to manipulate my account. If I can make a parallel between normal accounting and the distributed accounting. And that's a big problem. That's why most of the banks, they're using technology like Corda or Hyperledger and not a fork of Bitcoin. Because if you install an Ethereum, a pure Ethereum, you will not be able to do that. Of course, you don't have the private key, of course, you kicked out. But on Corda, Hyperledger, or even the version like Bezu and some of these versions, you can do it.
Do you know if the question that popped into my mind, do you know if Bitcoin is considered a security here in Europe?
Bitcoin, no, I mentioned Bitcoin, but if you look at all the discussion we have about public blockchains, everybody is talking about Ethereum. We see a bit of discussion on Avalanche.
No. Avalanche, okay, interesting.
Avalanche is becoming more present, I think marketing at least. There's some proof of concept with Avalanche, in fact.
Oh.
But most of them are on Ethereum, some on Avalanche. I think that's all. No. There is one In Europe with a Polygon
Polygon, I
also.
was about to, yeah, to say.
Polygon, yes.
Oh, that's interesting. And
Yes.
well, with all the interoperability going on or working on, um, well, going back to Chainlink actually, which is a decentralized Oracle network, they have a partnership with Swift to explore blockchain tech and how it can be integrated into TradFi systems. How is that currently going? How is Swift? Because you worked at Swift, is there any progress being made in blockchain technology and cross interoperability systems being implemented within the, yeah, I guess, messaging network that Swift is?
Yes, I heard positive things about it, but you have to see Swift as a set of different networks.
Okay.
They propose different access. You have the traditional Swift, who was a traditional X25 network a long time ago, where you send a message and you hope the other one will get it in the 2 days. It's still on, but they changed the technology. But it was too slow, so they were pushed to have something fast, something on IP and not X25, and they created what they called SwiftNet. They migrated the former X25 network called Fin on IP. So they still have the two service on top of a single network layer. And now there is the blockchain. And the big question is to do what? So today, is there something that you can do on blockchain that you cannot do on traditional Swift? That was the key question. And the key question was answered by no, not really, accepted the actual movement on the blockchain. Because if I send you a Swift message to say, give me your digital asset from your Avalanche to my Ethereum, I can do it. They change the standard, they have fields, they have keywords, it can be done. So I send it to you and you say, okay, and so what? So the idea that they have with Chainlink is to say, I send it to Swift. It's never peer-to-peer, it's always via a Swift hub. So the Swift hub, before delivering it to you, will ask Chainlink to do the actual blockchain movement of asset. So that's the point, and Swift is experiencing it, but they never went that far in the automation of a transaction.
Do you believe that peer-to-peer can happen one day, or that Swift could be replaced by a fully decentralized system at one point in the future, or is it just too important to banks?
Conceptually, yes, they can, but the advantage of Swift is you have one interface and you send the whole traffic, and they decide if the counterparty can receive it, how to send it, in which format. You don't have to care for, and the price has gone down. So really, the value for money is quite good.
Okay.
So replacing it by a peer-to-peer technology, because today it's very nice. We have, imagine we decide to exchange things. How are we doing the trading? How are we doing the settlement? So we can do it over, let's say, over Teams. We agree, but then I send you money and you send me the security. But in which format? If I have to integrate with my own system and you with your own system, how do you expect the format to come? So you need a kind of interface. You need the smart contract to be able to handle the business information that you send. And that's something I always said to Swift. You look at technology, but you forget to look at the business standard. And I say it on the panel, because today we have a smart contract. Okay, but can I send an ISO 20022 message to a smart contract? Today, no, but we should. I mean, an ERC20, we know how to send it, but is it enough for cash? Potentially. Can I interface an ERC20 with my own system?
That's why.
Potentially.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Potentially, but if you compare ERC20 with the traditional MT103, that is the pure basic payment message from Swift, you have more fields on Swift than on the ERC20. So what are you doing with the charges? Who is paying the charges? And these kind of things. A value date, something stupid. You have a payment and you need the value date the day after. And you say, okay, or the day before. I send you a message today with value date yesterday. How do you reflect it in ERC20? So we need a business standard, and payment is easy. I don't even talk about securities. But we need a business standard to say any single smart contract should be able to handle this standard. And I think Swift could be the kind of auditor or validator of the business standard implemented on smart contract.
Yeah.
So if HSBC and BNP are launching a smart contract to do peer-to-peer payments, that's possible. I mean, it's from your account to another account. Which one will you choose? How do you know which one to choose? You don't have a kind of reference data. You don't have a list of service. It's becoming very, very complicated. If you continue sending one Swift message to say transfer 25 Ether from you to me, and if it works, well, that's good. And that's what they want to achieve, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be great.
Yeah, and I think Chainlink is a great partner in that to help assist that communication. As a going back a bit, as a senior business analyst at Euroclear with an obvious passion for Web3, what are you the most excited about in the coming 5 to 10 years?
Preparing my retirement. So, no, but we have quite interesting projects going on. I mean, the system we have built is for primary issuance because a client asked us to link it with the legacy system because the legacy system has thousands of clients. So it shows that adoption needs reach. We need reach. And I think finding the way of growing the reach is something hyper exciting. How can we convince people to adopt our system? That would be very, very interesting. I don't have the answer today, but that's very exciting. Supporting new products. I don't know.
You're in a world where everything is changing so fast, and at the same time, it's not, because you have traditional finance and they like to stay within the safety of the system that they build. But at the other hand, well, in some regards, of course, but it's a very volatile world. I'll say it like that. So new things coming out every single day, and it's very exciting to see where we're going. I have one or two more questions, macroeconomics wise, just because you're a business analyst, I'd love to get your personal opinion on this. Again, there's so much happening. It's election year. We have the Fed and the CBE. They might suggest or they might cut interest rates, perhaps in Europe or definitely in the United States. They will turn the money printers back on. What's your analysis of this? Do you think the world is heading towards a recession, or?
That's a good question.
It's a complicated question.
It's a good question. I have absolutely no idea. If I listen on the radio a couple of days ago, I heard a very famous analyst, business analyst, or financial analyst, and he had the same question. Do you think the result of the American election will put the whole world in a recession or something like that? And he said no one can predict it. So
there's a big shift definitely happening from the west to the east right now. I think I definitely agree. All eyes are on America. In this day, I think America still is the number 1 economy in the world, but we forget that Asia is there. Sometimes we forget that there's China and there's Russia, we're also doing things, and we're so focused on what the Fed is trying to decide. But then, yeah, you have the BRICS countries too that doing their own things. And yesterday, for example, Russia legalized crypto mining again, which is, I believe, a very big shift again in how Asia is looking at cryptocurrencies and blockchain with their own goals. So I believe that in again 5 to 10 years we will see a major shift, and who knows, maybe in 10 years we'll be talking about China instead of the Federal Reserve, or the China Central Bank there, so, or the Bank of China.
Yeah,
Well,
but that's something very important because recession might happen, of course. Economy in China is not going very well now, but you said 10 years, 5 years to 10 years. What will be the business partner of the European banks in 5 years? That might be the key to understand it. And keep in mind that the first CBDC that works is in China, or Salvador or whatever. But
yeah.
I prefer talking about China. It's more impactful than Salvador. So I think if China decide that wholesale CBDC is a very good thing for global trade, and if they open it, make it easy, and have a reach, because they might have a reach, we will have to think of CBDC, but in terms of digital yuan more
Yeah.
than any other one.
There.
The digital euro, I think they have lost the war of CBDC because they're thinking way too much on a market that is already automated. We have already a lot of digitalized cash. We all have our credit card, we all have debit cards, we all have payment by mobile, etc.
Yeah.
While in a different on China, they move from paper to distributed directly. So that might be a key changer, and more than what the US is doing for the next
Definitely.
years.
Yeah, they're stepping away from the dollar as well. Russia and Asia and BRICS. So very interesting to see what's going to happen there. Well, I think we I have all my questions asked. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Are there any upcoming events or updates from you that the public should know about? Maybe some exciting stuff that's currently happening at Euroclear. You mentioned something before.
Well, we will publish a white paper October, something like that, on interoperability, because we made a gateway to make our DFMI system interoperable with other systems. But it's more lab research, because today we're discussing with half a dozen of other network providers like the HSBC, DTCC, etc. But none of them want direct connectivity between networks. It's more via Swift message, for example, or other type of message. So, but it might be interesting to see the market reaction to our white paper, because basically, well, it's white paper, so we don't say a lot. But what we said is, okay, we link. We linked an Ethereum or Bezu system to our DFMI that is Corda. So we said, okay, we need security to know which account can have which security. But this is not the point. It's quite easy to do it. We made it, test it. It's cool. What is really important is what you do with the reference data, because the reference data are on our own system. And if I send you a token, because we use ERC20 type of token, with a reference to a reference data that is formalized in the NFT type of things. So we say, okay, my ERC20, I've got 20 equities of whatever. I point to an NFT that is the reference data. But if I move the token to the other network, should I move the NFT with it? If I make an update on my reference data, how can I update all the NFT that move to different networks? That was really the key question. And if I use traditional way to publish information, how can I make sure that the problem we have today are solved? And they will not be solved, because the problem we have today is the update are not taken into account by all the web servers in the world. So if you look at 2 or 3 or 5 different data providers, you might have different data. So how can you solve it with the blockchain?
Yeah.
Are oracles the best way to do it? I was thinking of Chainlink actually to do that. Can I publish using Chainlink the data that are the golden source on our Corda system, publish it via Chainlink, and any network in the world can subscribe to it?
That would be great.
But yeah, but there are so many constraints to that, and so many legal stuff that it will take years. But I still believe that should be the best way forward. But
well, that was super interesting. I'm definitely, if it's out, I'm gonna check out the website. I'm very curious to read it. Thank you so much, Olivier, for taking the time.
yeah, enjoy Hong Kong. Is it Hong Kong now, the Chainlink event?
Next Smartcon is in Hong Kong, October 30th till 31st. Yeah.